Welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to talk about AI and the triggers that we all have. We've got one of the world's leading experts in brand development and creative design. Paul Wolski was with us, and he's with Miller Zell, and he's their VP of creative director over there. And it's exciting to have him on. And Paul, I met him at a convention. He was leading a conference. He's a speaker and a great engagement. And he's going to have some things that really will trigger you. So stick around and enjoy this. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anthony. Happy to be here.
So is AI going to take over our jobs?
Okay, we're just charging out of the gate with that.
Right at it. I'm going to go at it for you. It's AI taking over.
No pressure. Okay, so... I think it depends on the area within which you work. If we're talking about retail, I think there's certainly cause for concern that over time we could see AI assume certain roles. But I think as a designer leading a creative team, I'm not so sure what that looks like right now. So is AI going to take my job anytime soon or those on my team? I would say not in the near future.
You pose a really interesting question as you and your team are looking at AI. And, certainly all of us have been impressed with what, ChatGPTs are doing and, right. What OpenAI is doing. I mean, they're really great skills and letters and for sure there's amazement in the growth in the last 24 months of their development. And so you kind of looked at it with your team, and I thought that was an interesting way of looking internal at your team and where you guys were at it. I'd like you to talk to the audience about it because I think it's something that applies to all organizations and a great way for them to look at it together to kind of address the concerns.
Yeah, let's face it, for decades we've been living with AI. It's been a part of our lives, but really, as you said, within the last year and a half, 2 years, it just feels like it kind of burst out from behind the curtain and it's landed center stage to dominate conversations around creativity and design. And it's kind of sending shockwaves through creative communities. It's challenging the very definition of what it means to be creative. So, I wanted to take the temperature of my team to understand what our AI awareness spectrum looked like. So I pulled the team together and just a show of hands revealed a range of reactions and understanding. I had some designers with little awareness about AI, others who were already kind of dabbling with it on their own time, and then others who were legitimately concerned about what does this mean for my job in the future. So I thought, okay, with that range of perception and to be honest, degrees of ignorance, I was like, okay, we need to level set. And if we're going to confront AI, just to simply understand its place at the design table, we need to confront it and demystify it and try to get our arms around it rather than keep it at arm's length, because I think that would just do us more harm than good in the long run. So we created some internal exercises so that we could do that very thing, kind of interact with AI and understand what it would mean for our roles here. So, the first one was just an internal exercise I asked everyone to participate in. My team is made up of graphic designers and interior environments and designers, motion graphics, production art. Everybody participated. And I had everybody use an AI platform and created a simple brief where I asked them to enter 3 mandatory prompts. Their favorite destination, their favorite color, and their favorite artist or artistic movement. Beyond that, they could add anything else to personalize it, to make it their own. And the images that I received were stunning. They were beautiful. And I think much to everyone's surprise, even my more reluctant designers kind of really got into the exercise, and the collaboration that it created among the team. Designers were starting to help each other and coach each other, and having breakthroughs with prompting to kind of yield better results. And I loved seeing that kind of bonding experience that was coming out of something that I think was regarded with a little bit of apprehension. So to actually kind of, mark and even celebrate what I felt was a collective hurdle we jumped, I took all of their images and we had them printed in our graphics center here on 8x8-inch tiles that we displayed in our building here. It's an AI, it's a physical AI gallery of everyone's tiles on the wall, and it's actually become a great part of our storytelling when we conduct building tours, because we work with a lot of different retail categories, a lot of different clients, all of whom are on some level grappling with AI, and seeing an example of kind of an icebreaker exercise, I think has inspired them and given them a fresh way to think about, okay, this is an interesting way to on-ramp AI into our respective teams. So that was just one example of a way we were able to kind of disarm the whole kind of the whole topic around.
Well, I mean, you're ultimately, it's the fear of it that stops us, right? There's this, this thing, AI, and they're, shut down. And what I love is that you guys played with that, right? You kind of played with and took the group down the playground and said, look, let's just break the ice. Let's go look at it and go, all right, if we didn't just discount it and not look over there, like it's not there, like I'm not looking, right? Yeah. You guys said, no, let's go look at it. Let's go play with it. Let's engage it into our world, like it, like a gift that it can be. And now all of a sudden from there, it demystifies some of it, right? How many people were surprised what it could do?
Well, I think everybody, enjoyed the exercise. I think they did realize that the quality of the output was entirely dependent on the quality of their input. So I think for anybody who thought that, AI was kind of a touch of the button automated exercise, soon realized, like, no, they do play a role in kind of shaping the outcome. I had some designers who participated in the exercise, and they're like, okay, here's my image. That was fun. I'm going to go back to what I like to do. And I was like, okay, I hear you. But then I had others who really took to AI and over time have really become avid learners. I think the exercise emboldened some of my designers to think about ways AI could integrate into certain processes. I mean, one of the easiest ways to do so is image editing. I mean, that's the thing. AI is just so accessible. It's everywhere. It's on every interface. So the invitation to kind of bring it in is always present. But I think that exercise again brought down certain fences where designers are using it for image enhancement, up-resing, photo retouching, all kinds of things like that. So on some levels, it's being used for brainstorm ideation. I mean, much in the way you'll have designers look to all kinds of resources for inspiration. This is just another way to do so. As far as it being kind of a driving force, I think we conducted another exercise where we wanted to see what would happen if we kind of put AI in the driver's seat, so to speak, and let it guide a process. We came up with a brief for a fictitious retailer we came up with. Just to, again, I think giving ourselves the runway and the permission to play with this also removed some of the pressures around, let's be imperfect, let's get messy, let's get in the dirt and see what happens. So we came up with kind of a fictitious retailer to develop, concepts for like a dramatic store entry for like a specialty high-end gift retailer. And I think it was interesting. One of the mandatories kind of set in the brief is that you had to use AI as your sole concepting tool. I wanted to remove any familiar go-tos, creature comforts, all gone. Let's all jump into the cold water together
Yeah.
and kind of just experience the shock of this. So it's funny, again, at varying levels. I had designers a little resistant, digging in their heels. I think in terms of, how it affected process or influenced process, that was jamming people's radar. The results were wildly, they were kind of outlandish, impractical. There's, AI swings really wild. You don't really know what you're going to get despite best efforts. And I think I had some designers expressing frustration around, the degree of prompting. They're like, I'm a designer. This isn't how I create, but all I'm doing is I'm sitting in front of my screen and I'm typing, I'm editing, I'm moving paragraphs, I'm playing with syntax, I'm, reading tutorials on how to. They're like, I'm not a writer, I'm a designer. And I thought that was kind of an interesting, expression of what was coming out of this. But again, it was a little clumsy by admission, but I think that was also just part of that was the purpose of it too, is just to see where do we net out. And more importantly, it was all the takeaways, the lessons we learned about. I think everybody knows this out. AI is really it's not the star. It's a supporting player. And I think it was important for us to realize, okay, AI is something that as we learn how to wield it, we really need to understand how it kind of bakes into our existing process. It can't be the process, if that makes sense.
No, I just saw a college professor talking about, kids are all using AI, and we spent all this energy over the last 18 months trying to figure out if they're using AI and scold them for it. And the professor was saying, no, what we're doing now is we're going to allow them to use AI, but now we've upped the ante on expectations. Right
Yeah.
now, it's not, the monotonous work of the tedious work of all the, multimodal stuff you have to do to go start to create concepts. AI kind of gives you some chances to go do that. Now, like you, I had a really hard time with that prompting stuff. It was hours of typing. But what happened to me just in the last few months is I've now created a one I can talk to. I call her Zoe, and Zoe and I have this great conversations. We have these great conversations in that, and Zoe can help me go through writing letters or putting plans together or schedules. And it was a big differentiating factor from because I'm a real terrible typer and speller, and it slows things down. And all of a sudden they increased it where I can now speak to my AI, and dramatically different was my ability to have the output on that. And, to that point where it just it got me to a starting point, right? Faster, right? All the stuff I had to go, all the data I'd have to go collect to get to a starting point. Right. Now I've got to that starting point. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about right now. You're able to get to that. And then from there, you do what you guys do, which is that human piece, that part that really does make Miller Zell that differentiating factor. You guys have got the peak environmental experience for the retailers.
Exactly. I think we realized it's a helpful catalyst, but exactly. I think it's still really important to remember that it takes us to kind of serve as the gut check when it comes to developing concepts or solutions that are right for whatever brand we're working on. Is the tone of voice right? Does it feel right? Does it look right? So AI can generate all kinds of recommendations and solutions, but ultimately you need somebody to kind of hone it and craft it. Now, I know that just exponentially AI is continuing to teach itself, and that level of kind of iteration is just so rapid right now. Who knows what my story will be in a couple of years, but I think right now, as I said, giving ourselves the permission to kind of to play with it helped settle things down, and now everybody kind of has some solid footing in terms of, okay, I understand its capabilities. but no one's being, overtly resistant, but I think we just realize it's there at our disposal. I realize that when it comes to design, it's kind of a different category altogether, because, you and I were talking about, there are other facets of retail, kind of planning and execution, where I think you have kind of hardline tactical areas where AI could kind of, penetrate much faster, and you could see much deeper kind of systemic change take place. But design is, there are aspects to design that are still a little, idiosyncratic and interpretive, and I'm not sure, AI is quite there to kind of,
Well,
take that from us.
how many people on your staff were, and I have this on my staff, people who are like, hey, this isn't going to affect me. I'm going to retire before I get there, right? They're trying to outrun AI.
Right. I don't know. I don't know if I encountered anybody with that kind of mindset, but I think you do touch on something interesting around just, what one's regard or attitude toward. I think anytime, tech kind of pushes through in a way that can feel somewhat aggressive. I think we've witnessed this, other shades of this in the past, where something happens technologically, and the ripple effect just, it induces degrees of this angst or panic, and it's like, oh my God, I already feel like I'm behind the curve. And I think AI is doing that times 10, just because it's just advancing. Every article is talking about, like, how in leaps and bounds it's just kind of taking us into, hyperdrive. But I think it's important for companies or teams to acknowledge, as I said before, like an awareness spectrum. Like I'm a Gen X late adopter. I own it. I lean into it. I know how I'm hardwired. I'm not a digital native. So it takes me a minute to warm up to technology, and I like to get a sense. I like technology to settle in, to see where it's going. And a lot of people, I think, share that attitude. And I think when you work in companies of size, you're going to see that spectrum of late adopters and early adopters, in that space in between. So what does your learning curve look like as a company? You have to be really clear on how to bring this topic to the table. Are you going to be met with folded arms and resistance, or do you try to set the table in a way to have people approach it with some degree of open-mindedness? So I think that's critical. I think the cultural conversations that need to take place within organizations, that's going to be key to how you prepare for this, because it's not an issue of if, it's when. It's abundantly clear. So, you can stick your head in the sand, or personal opinions aside, just go, okay, this is entering the mix. So we ultimately need to know how to, wield it to the best of our ability.
Well, I think that's what's funny about the breakout session I was in with you, right? Your approach to me was so refreshing, in that you weren't trying to pretend like you had it all figured out.
God, no.
And, that to me is a great spot to be in, right? Is that just be aware of where we actually are, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what's kind of key about you and your ability to speak to groups, is that sharing that experience with them, that it's okay not to have it all figured out. There's nothing wrong with you. None of us do. I speak in front of groups. I was in front of the Young Presidents Association for construction the other day, and every one of those every one of those people are in the same. They're all cats chasing a laser pointer. Like, oh, okay, what am I supposed to do here? Yeah. And there's a lot of real, concern, and just, no one wants to get behind. We all realize there's some a gift to it. We just got to figure out how to use this. But I think where you were at was such a calming space to go, all right, we don't have it figured out. We're noticing our anxiety, our angst. And now let's just play some games with it. And that opened up a dialogue between your group, that I think the ramp of that, the projection of that gives you something that most people can't see the value. It at least gives you a place to start from.
Right, right. And I mean, there are certainly so many ways to integrate AI, and if we're talking about retail and customer experience, customer engagement, there are faster routes to integrate digital into, dynamic digital content, to activate merchandising displays, and, kind of incorporating, omni-channel interactions so that you're getting that kind of seamless experience from device to in-store. A lot of what my team does, we're dealing with spatial environments. So, there's any mixture of spatial planning, retail communications, just branded decor. So again, that's why from our perspective, it's kind of difficult to kind of view what we do in total. And again, touching so many different clients and so many different types of projects. I don't think we're kind of going, oh boy, AI is gonna, take this facet over. That's not how we're viewing it. I think we're too multi-layered in a way as a team. We're not a singular retail we're not a singular retailer or brand, dealing with like a network of stores. We're dealing with numerous clients, all of whom have different challenges. So I think the way we dial in and out of that type of work, it's just our landscape's a little bit different.
Well, there's also some stuff that I think you look at. I was with some architects the last week, and we started really talking, playing out. All right, look, how does AI support us, right? I mean, as we start to look at digital design, does AI become the architect? And they're like, well, first of all, they don't hold licenses, and there's some other stuff that can become concerning. But could it take some of the weight off of the work that we have to do, the details, the little parts and pieces, or even one of the ones I didn't even think about? It was something kind of fun that they could bring products that we don't normally look at from around the world, right? Product availability. You could see a day where, it gives us stuff, that tools and techniques that I didn't see before, right? It can pull from things around the world. And then on the backside, once it's designed, accessibility and purchasing and coordination, all of that becomes something that really becomes part of the other side of what you guys do, right? You guys, not only do you guys design these, I mean, you guys are the industry standard for creating, spaces for great brands. I mean, you guys, when it comes to great brands across this country, Miller Zell is really the brand that does that. And, but now how does that become the helper in what you do?
Well, sure. And I think that's where everyone needs to recognize that. I mean, I know that there are, countless opinions and articles about AI, taking over roles, but there is going to be a period of time where, AI is that kind of additive engine, that additive capability that we need to learn how to bring into the mix. And again, I think there are just so many ways, that kind of behind the curtain or more overtly, the role AI is going to play, is going to change everything. And just the degree to which we have to stay up, like the rapid rate of change in retail is kind of demanding this level of quick response. And AI is certainly, there to kind of facilitate that, right?
It blows me away. We were doing some trying to get really crazy with prompting the other day on demographic modeling, right? From the real estate team. And we were playing with an AI model and stuff that we couldn't even imagine where demographic models will go in the future. I mean, 10,000x what we are today. And I mean, it was stuff about weather patterns and urban growth and population density, and like being able to see the stuff, multiplied out, right? Our human brains just, can't it's just too much to comprehend or too much to calculate at that point. But, there was some of the prompts were just really fun to do. And, as it becomes, but what you did was amazing, is in that you got to find a place to start with your group to play. If the resistance is, I'm not playing with it, right? I'm not going to bring it in here.
Yeah.
There's no option later on. There's no, and the real gift is those who start today playing. Even, I'm not saying jump all in, because I'm with you. Jumping all in may be a big distraction that's not going to be very profitable for most of us yet, right? I mean, maybe one day it will be, but today we still got to bread and butter, feed our families, and get products out the door. Dreaming about what it's going to do, great, but today we got to get projects out, right? So, but at least you start at a place where, all right, if we start to play around with this, and then we can notice, all right, maybe it's, and give us some more creative options. Maybe it's in the way that we purchase some things. Look, what happens in the play really starts the opportunities, right? The things that you couldn't see without playing.
I think you're right, and I think the window to do that is now. I mean, again, this is all still relatively new. We weren't talking like this 2 years ago. So I think, and also kind of coming to terms with, your personal position on it too. Like it's easy for me to have a personal take on AI. I was talking with you before, outside of work, I'm a lifelong artist. I'm an illustrator. I love to write. I still love pencil on paper. So, my relationship and reaction to AI on a personal level is different than the mindset I need to adopt here at work. And I think trying to reconcile that is an interesting place to be right now. I think, again, specifically talking about creatives or designers, I think everyone is struggling to walk this line. But yeah, now is the time to try to figure out how to on-ramp it.
My wife is an attorney. I'm like, are you using ChatGPT? She goes, I'll never, no way. I write my own briefs, and this is the skill, and you're gonna make brain rot with all you people are using that. And I'm like, I get it, because she does a great job. She writes, her writing is what's one of her magical gifts. And all of a sudden there's this feeling that I'm not giving that up to an AI.
Yeah. I know, I don't know if it's apples to apples, but think about something like, desktop publishing, what a seismic kind of, shift that was, where the whole industry around pre-press production was turned upside down. And we go through these movements where technology does this, and we have to kind of allow things to settle down to understand how it makes sense for us. So is AI an inevitability? When it comes to retail, absolutely, but I think everybody just needs to take a breath. No one's moving at exactly the same pace right now. No. If anything, I think everyone's awareness is super heightened because it's in the media all the time. But now I think it's that transition from awareness to action that you're kind of touching on. Now it's about the time to work with it, figure it out.
Well, without doing the game that you played, how much longer would it take in your team to get there? I mean, what's great about what you did, and I think that's one of the gifts of you speaking to the companies that you speak to, is giving them that gift of going, hey, let's not force feed you in this. Let's just get to a place of awareness, right? Your processes that you've created to get your team there, I think, are great for all the teams, for teams across this country, right? Having you come into an organization and talk to them about this, I think it's a great way of doing it. And it takes maybe even, I'm not sure it alleviates all the resistance, but at least it just, I can look at it from a spot. I got called out in a conference in front of like 300 people, and they were talking about AI and construction. I'm like, are you crazy? Our business is no way you can ever have AI. And the guy called me, we're in front of 300 people, and he calls me out and goes, you're a taxi driver. I go, what? What? He goes, yeah, you're one of those guys that own a shield and you don't want to become an Uber driver.
Yeah.
And I was like, when he said that to me, I'm like, all right. How could that be true somewhat? And then from there, it's been this kind of unwinding of it going, maybe that's some of my resistance. And I think that's what your process does, right? That's where the gift of you as a leader to get aware with your people and helping other companies become aware of, maybe where that resistance is.
Yeah, and I think simply by just sharing our story honestly, I think I've had some folks come up to me after I've talked about this at conferences, and they said, what you're sharing, what you're relating really hits home. I'm dealing with this, as it relates to my team, or we're all scratching our heads, not quite knowing how to come at this. So, I think part of it is just being honest that we're all figuring it out. I think again, going back to kind of, how do you kind of crack open this topic within your organization? I think it's important to pull the right stakeholders together. We formed a steering committee here, about a year and a half ago, because we wanted to get in front of this and not chase after it. That I think that would be everyone's the biggest mistake to make is to kind of sit on your hands and not be aware of it, and again not be prompted to start taking some level of action. But by creating that, we were able to kind of research and vet out the right kinds of platforms that the committee felt were permissible to use here. And again, it's still very much a framework, but at least it's set up some sense of a framework around which we can develop practices, protocols, and again, understand where and how do we dial this in. We're a rather, we're a sizable company, and we have a lot of disciplines under one roof. So we can't all kind of charge out of the gate, running down different paths, trying our own thing. I don't think that's the smartest way to come at this. But I think if organizations can kind of get together and talk about it in a way where you could start to roadmap, set up, I don't know, milestones of some sort to kind of make sense of this. I think that could also kind of tamp down anxiety.
Well, I got to tell you something. You are a gift. Going through that breakout session with you was something that's amazing. Paul, if people want to bring you into their organization and speak to their group and help start this kind of idea, this creating a path for AI and just kind of doing a systems check for their group.
Yeah.
What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
You could reach out to me. I have my Miller Zell email address. I'm on LinkedIn, so happy to connect with anybody who's interested in wanting to learn more about the specifics around those exercises. So yeah.
I'll put all that down below. I'll put all the links to Paul. So if you guys want to get a hold of Paul and have him come in and talk to your group or your conference or whatever you're working on, I believe me, it was one of the most enlightening spaces to be in. It was like this real open, honest conversation about what's going on. And when I could see that, it was like I have to have him on the podcast because it's the first time I ever saw a speaker speak vulnerably about the experience of going through it as a group. And I think that that's something that will be helpful for you and your group. And it was certainly for me, and bringing that back to our group was something that just was great. So Paul, it was great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this conversation, Anthony.
As we continue to unwind AI and where the world's going, I'd love to have you on some more as you continue to break through with your organization. I'd love to have you on again sometime.
I'd love it. Thanks.
Thanks. Hey, podcast guys, guests, thanks for being here. Last week we had 65,000 people on the website. We had over 4,000 downloads on the podcast. And we noticed that a bunch of you guys, there was 40% of you that made it to the end of a podcast but weren't subscribers. If you could take a second and do that, Alyssa and the team work hard on finding amazing speakers, amazing guests like Paul to come on board. And those numbers do make a difference, right? Having great numbers and subscribers makes a big difference. So if you could do that now, we'd be completely grateful. And as always, thanks for listening.